Okay, so I know you've sent us a ton of stuff on like UFOs and government cover-ups and all these recent events that just seem completely out there.
Yeah, it can be a lot to take in.
Totally. It's like drinking from a fire hose with all this information, right? You've got articles, reports, everything.
Absolutely. It's easy to get lost in it all.
And that's where we come in. We've sifted through it all, and we're here to help you make sense of it and find the most interesting pieces.
That's our mission with this deep dive.
Exactly. We're talking first-hand accounts of UFO retrievals.
Oh, yeah.
Whispers of government programs using people with psychic abilities. Crazy, right?
It's definitely some next level stuff.
And a whole network of private companies working in the shadows.
It really paints a picture of a reality that's way more complicated than we think.
No kidding.
Yeah.
This isn't just about lights in the sky anymore.
Not even close. We're dealing with potential tech breakthroughs, ethical dilemmas.
The nature of reality itself.
Exactly.
Are you ready to jump into the deep end?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right. Let's start with the man at the center of it all, Jacob Barber.
Right, he's the main character in all of this.
Former Air Force special operative and contractor who claims to have seen some truly incredible things.
His background is crucial to understanding his claims.
Totally. He talks about a childhood marked by trauma, a fascination with science.
And how he ended up in a highly classified Air Force program.
And here's where things get really interesting. He was trained as a red teamer.
Red teamer?
Yeah, like in cybersecurity where they have experts try to hack into systems to find weaknesses.
Oh, right, like thinking like the enemy to expose vulnerabilities.
Exactly. Barber was doing that.
Yeah.
But for this top secret program.
Interesting.
Yeah, specializing in deception, security, and transportation.
Skills that would become really important later on, it seems.
Huge. And he says his initial training as an airplane mechanic was just a cover.
A cover for his true role in the program.
Right. He describes this whole secret world, a black world, operating right alongside our everyday reality.
Hidden in plain sight.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And completely hidden from public view.
Look, there's this line, the blue-black line, separating what we know and this world of classified operations.
And the missions he was involved in, top secret, totally compartmentalized. He couldn't even talk about them with his colleagues. Wow. The level of secrecy is mind-blowing. It makes you wonder what they were trying to protect. Or maybe more importantly, what they were trying to hide.
Right, what are they keeping under wraps?
It's like a giant puzzle. And it gets even more intriguing when he starts talking about his first-hand encounters with, well, let's just call them UFOs.
UFOs, okay.
One of the most striking stories he tells is about retrieving a 20-foot egg-shaped craft from a military testing range in the California desert.
Wait, a 20-foot egg?
Yeah. Can you picture that?
I'm trying to.
He describes using nets to secure this egg-shaped craft, transporting it by helicopter.
And no one was allowed to even talk about it.
The craziest part is how calmly he describes it all. It's like he's talking about picking up groceries or something.
He's not trying to sensationalize it at all.
No, exactly. But he's very clear about one thing. This craft was not something we humans built.
Interesting. So what makes him so sure about that?
Well, he points to how suddenly the craft appeared,
Okay.
how it flew in ways we can't replicate,
Right.
and the government's really strange reaction to the whole thing.
So basically he's saying he's seen all the advanced tech we have.
And this was something else entirely.
Something beyond our understanding.
And that's not even the wildest part. Barber then claims that this egg can be summoned, like it's some kind of pet.
Summoned? What, like a cosmic pet?
That's where things get really mind-bending. He says summoning the egg involves specific techniques,
Okay.
some using high-tech stuff, but others relying on what he calls psionic assets.
Psionic assets? What does that even mean?
I know it sounds like something out of a movie, but he's talking about people with trained psychic abilities.
You mean like people who can see things remotely or move objects with their minds?
Exactly. He claims this program uses these people to interact with these UFOs.
Hold on. Are you saying the government might be using psychics to call UFOs like their own version of the X-Men?
That's what Barber claims.
Yeah.
And get this, he says that a Nobel-nominated Stanford microbiologist, Dr. Gary Nolan, actually saw them summon this egg.
Dr. Gary Nolan, the scientist who's been studying the biological effects of UFO encounters.
The one and only.
Wow, that changes things.
Right, and remember, he's examined materials people claim are from UFOs.
So him being involved adds a whole other layer of credibility to this story.
Okay, so we've got a former Air Force operative psychic Spies and a Stanford professor all mixed up in this.
This is getting wild.
Yeah, it's about to get even crazier.
I can't wait. So we've got this egg-shaped craft, maybe summoned by psychics, and a Stanford professor who might have seen it all happen. What happens next?
Well, after the egg, Barber talks about retrieving a different craft, This one was shaped like an octagon.
An octagon?
And he says this mission really messed with him.
Really? How so?
He describes experiencing all these intense emotional and psychological effects while transporting this craft.
Like it was affecting him somehow.
Almost like there was a psychic connection between him and this octagon.
Okay, so we've got psychic spies, a giant egg, and now a mysterious octagon that can mess with your mind.
Getting creepy, right?
Definitely take a darker turn. And remember Michael Herrera, the former Marine we talked about earlier?
Yeah.
He claims he saw a similar octagon-shaped craft in Indonesia during a humanitarian mission.
That's right. What was his story again?
He says this craft was transporting psionic assets, possibly children.
Hold on. Are you saying they were trafficking children?
That's what his testimony seems to imply.
That's messed up. If these kids are the psionic assets that Barber keeps talking about.
It raises some very serious ethical questions about this whole program.
So Barber picks up this mind-bending octagon. Maybe he senses there are kids inside. And then what? What did he do after this?
Well, that's where things get even more complicated. Barber starts talking about private aerospace contractors.
Private companies.
Yeah, and their role in all of this. He suggests that these companies may actually control recovered UFO technology.
Wait, are you saying that the government might not be in charge? That these private companies might be running the show?
It's a possibility. He suggests that the government may have lost control of the UFO issue to these powerful and unaccountable companies.
Okay, I need a minute to process this. We've got possible human trafficking private companies running wild and the government potentially in the dark. This is starting to sound like a conspiracy theory.
It's a lot to take in, and Barber doesn't stop there. He claims he was used as a hidden hand, a disposable asset in a dangerous game.
A hidden hand. What does that even mean?
He and his team were tasked with recovering what are called tough books.
Tough books. What are those?
Basically, super secret ledgers or records containing classified information. Think of it like the black box of a program, recording everything that happened.
So they were sent to recover evidence that could expose this whole thing.
That's what he believed. He thought these tough books held evidence of criminal activity within the UFO program.
But if he was a hidden hand, does that mean he thought they were being set up?
To take the fall, yeah, that's exactly what he suspected.
So what did he do?
He went rogue, sent his team home, and started investigating on his own.
Wow. So he's in the middle of this web of secrecy and lies, and he decides to fight back. But who is he fighting against? The government. These private companies.
That's the big question. He doesn't name names, but he suggests that there's a power struggle within the program. He hints that control of the UFO situation has become fragmented, with private contractors potentially wielding more power than the government.
So it's a free-for-all with everyone scrambling for control. What about the CIA, the Department of Defense? What are they doing?
According to Barber, they seem to be just as clueless. When he tried to reach out to them for help, he says they were just as confused and scared as he was.
This is insane. So no one is in control. Everyone is operating in this cloud of secrecy and fear.
That's a good way to put it. And this brings us to one of the most interesting parts of Barber's story, how he tried to expose this program. By red teaming the Department of Defense's pre-publication security review.
Red teaming again.
Yeah, but this time he targeted the DOPSR.
DOPSR. Remind me what that is again.
It's a process anyone who's held a security clearance has to go through. If they want to publish anything, even if it's fiction, the Department of Defense reviews it to make sure there's no classified information.
Oh, right. Didn't he use this to leak information?
He did. He and his team wrote what they called a factional novel.
Factional.
A blend of fact and fiction. And they submitted it to DOPSR.
So they hid real information, even classified stuff, in a made-up story.
Exactly. They were trying to expose the program's inner workings by disguising it as fiction.
Hold on. If they were trying to expose the program, wouldn't that basically hand it to the people who were trying to silence him? What if it backfired?
It was a gamble, for sure. But Barber was playing a long game. He knew that the DOPSR process designed to prevent leaks actually had some loopholes.
Loopholes? How so?
He was using the system against itself. By submitting this novel, he could see how the reviewers reacted, their questions, their edits. It all gave him clues about what they were most worried about.
So he was using their own paranoia against them. That's pretty...
It's a clever tactic. He was essentially turning the tables.
Did it work? Did they figure out what he was doing?
They did eventually, but not before he was able to extract some valuable information. He learned about inconsistencies in the system, identified some key players, and even managed to slip some classified details through under the guise of fiction.
So he outsmarted the system designed to silence him. That's impressive.
It highlights how well he understood the system and his willingness to exploit its weaknesses. He knew they couldn't redact his consciousness.
Okay, so we've got this crazy story of secrecy, potential human trafficking, private companies calling the shots, and a clever whistleblower fighting back. It's a lot.
But what does it all mean for us? For the listener trying to understand all this?
That's the question, isn't it? And it's something we'll delve into in the final part of our deep dive, right? We've got to talk about what Barber says about UFOs themselves, those recent events in New Jersey, and what this all means for humanity's place in the universe.
Stay tuned, because things are about to get even more thought-provoking.
Okay, we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Jacob Barber's story. We've gone through secret government programs, psychic spies, shadowy private companies. It's been wild, right?
It really has. And now we're getting to the heart of it all. What does this mean for us? What does it mean for humanity's place in the universe?
Exactly. We were just talking about the New Jersey drone incident and how Barber hinted that something non-human might have been involved.
Right.
But what does that actually mean? Like, are we talking alien spaceships disguised as drones?
He doesn't say that outright, but he does suggest that these phenomena can mimic technology.
Mimic.
Yeah, making it almost impossible to tell what's human and what's not.
So what we saw in New Jersey could have been super advanced tech that we just don't understand yet.
It's possible. It's like trying to explain a smartphone to someone from 1,000 years ago.
I like that analogy. So how do we even wrap our heads around something so far beyond our science?
Well, Barber seems to think the answer is to expand our thinking,
Expand our thinking.
to consider a more holistic view of reality. He talks about consciousness, intuition, stuff that's not usually considered scientific.
Right.
He argues that science and spirituality aren't necessarily at odds. In fact, he thinks they might be two sides of the same coin. He even uses the term biologics to describe what might be on these craft,
Biologics.
suggesting it might not be little green men, but something more like bioengineered drones.
Bioengineered drones. That sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie.
Right. He's challenging us to think beyond those typical alien stereotypes, to consider life forms we can barely imagine.
I mean, it's a lot to take in. It's tempting to dismiss it all as fantasy or conspiracy theories.
I get it. But Barber's testimony and the fact that more and more whistleblowers are coming forward forces us to ask some big questions.
Like,
Are we really alone in the universe? And if not, what happens when we encounter beings that are way more advanced than us?
those are questions people have been asking forever. But it feels like we might be getting some real answers now.
It does feel like something's shifting. But Barber doesn't think those answers will come from governments or big institutions.
Whoa.
He thinks the truth will come from everyday people,
Everyday people.
those who are willing to question everything and explore the unknown.
So we can't rely on the government. And these private companies are probably hiding stuff too. How are we supposed to figure out what's going on?
Well, Barber suggests something pretty interesting. He thinks the government might actually be using the DOPSR process, that pre-publication review, as a way to leak information.
Wait, really? Like a backdoor for disclosure?
It's a possibility. They could be slipping classified info into books and articles disguised as fiction.
That's a pretty high-stakes game.
It would be.
Oh.
But it shows how creative people are getting in trying to share the truth.
Okay, so we've covered a lot. Barber's story, his tactics, his ideas about reality. What's the bottom line here? What are we supposed to take away from all of this?
That's the thing, there's no easy answer. Barber's testimony is like a starting point
A starting point for what?
for a much bigger conversation about our place in the universe, the nature of reality, and what we truly know.
It's a call to action then.
It is a challenge to explore the unknown and to accept that there are still mysteries out there.
He's saying our curiosity can't be silenced. We're all free to look up, ask questions, and come to our own conclusions.
Exactly. He keeps reminding us, skies aren't classified. We can all look up, pay attention, and decide for ourselves what we think.
So keep your eyes on the skies, stay curious, and never stop questioning.
Because finding the truth is a journey we all have to take ourselves.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you'll join us next time when we explore another fascinating topic.
Until then, keep exploring.